motivation for wanting to be a judge?
Okay, my motivation is both the good and the bad of what I've seen in court. And let me explain what I mean by that. Judges have a position of service, and it's a tremendous opportunity to and responsibility. You're dealing with people's lives, and not only their case, but how their case affects other people. So we can take an example of a child custody issue that comes before the court. That child custody issue is affecting someone who is not yet of the age to be able to fend for him or herself as a child.
Right.
In that situation, judges have a tremendous amount of responsibility in evaluating which of the potential housing options and home options would be the best fit for the child that's going to provide an educative and supportive and nurturing environment to prevent that child from becoming a ward of the court. The next step is if the neighborhood environment and the home environment is not adequate for that child, then the state might have to intervene. As someone who has worked as a group home counselor myself, I can tell you that that's not an ideal place for anyone. Unfortunately, it may be a better position in a better household environment than maybe their own parents, but it is one that's a very difficult job to make the decision that that is the best home for them. So this is an example of the type of service that a judge can do.
Is that the kind of practice you do now?
No, what I do now is primarily criminal defense and civil litigation as well.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm trying to give an example away from the criminal side.
Okay.
So in the criminal side as well, like I've had clients that made a big mistake, that committed a felony against someone else, and deserve to have some type of punishment. Judges are oftentimes faced with this predicament of saying, are you tough on crime or are you lenient? Well,
Right.
that's not
the issue?
well, that's not the only issue. Because, for example, in my case, the prosecutor would have been fine with having my client do 6 months in jail. If my client would have done 6 months in jail, my client would have got half time. So they would have done half time, which meant that my client would have spent 3 months in jail, 90 days in jail. Okay. What I worked out for my client was an ability to have the sentence be greater. And someone say, well, what kind of defense is that? Well, it was one that it was home detention where he can keep his job, keep the money that he was bringing in for his family, and keep food on the table, and have every other liberty aside from being able to work restricted. Okay, so have GPS monitoring and check to see whether or not there's any alcohol or drugs being used. Okay, so to some people might say, well, that's lenient. Well, is it? Is it really lenient to have someone spend a year of their life repaying their debt back to society like that, as opposed to 90 days? So to me, that was an example of someone, my client, who was willing to actually show that he was not trying to get away easy, that what he was trying to do was pay his debt to society, pay his debt to the victim, make enough money to put food on the table, and not have a cyclical example of another family that doesn't have a home.
How much does it cost for a taxpayer to keep someone in jail?
The average that I hear the most often is $40,000 a year we spend to house each individual inmate.
That's not counting all the staff. Is that counting the staff?
I don't know. It's just the average that I hear the most. That's the average that I hear most often.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe.
I believe that is a national average. So I would have to imagine that in San Francisco it costs more.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I heard that figure and I thought it's very expensive to keep someone in jail. It's better to find other solution, right? I mean, when they do sentences, on what do they base the time a person should spend in jail? Is it just off the top of their hand?
No, there's a ton of factors that affect sentencing. That affects the person's background. That affects the things such as the sophistication of the crime. So if someone plans out an offense against someone else, then it is presumed that their level of malice is higher than someone who does something because it's a spur-of-the-moment anger.
Okay.
So even when something does not rise to the level of a defense, you have things that may be like imperfect defenses, heat of passion, and different things that judges are allowed to consider when they issue sentences.
No, but the people who made the laws, they say, okay, for that type of crime you have so many years. For that type of crime, so many years. On what do they base the number of years? Just off the top of their head?
Well, no. Typically, you're dealing with ranges.
Yeah.
You also in California we have a high, a mid, and a low term. So that's where the judge gets to say, I think you need the high term on a particular offense because of your background, because of the way you went about this particular offense. And there's a list of factors that the California Rules of Court has set forth that helps guide the judges and evaluate that. But in terms of the legislature that drafted the laws and people that have placed in effect the overall ranges, that's something that's now out of the judges' hands. The judges have to work within the confines of what the laws already are,
right?
And make the best decision based on those parameters.
So you look, when you judge someone, you look up the number of years for that particular crime and then decide?
Yeah, I can look it up on my phone right now. I literally have an app for that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So if someone steals something...
this is not what you judge off of course. I want to be clear about that.
No, I know.
But it is something that's available to practitioners, because when someone comes to me and says, I got arrested for this offense, then I need to be able to tell that person quickly, what it is, what are you facing? At least what is the range of options.
Yes. Yeah. So if someone get arrested for stealing in a store, you tell him you're facing a year in jail?
It could be.
So so you looked at in your app? Yeah.
Well, you could. Some of them you have memorized, but still in the store is one that can take on different levels. If someone has been caught stealing before, that's one thing. If someone comes in with a bag that they brought in to use as a tool of the theft, then that can be considered burglary if they walked into the store already with that in mind.
Yeah, but
I appreciate this opportunity to get interviewed.
One more question.
Yeah.
Let's say someone steals something at Walgreens. They have top lawyers, right?
Yeah.
And the guy who stole has nobody to defend that sentence. So will the Walgreens top of the line lawyer win all the time?
Walgreens would not have their lawyers involved in that,
no?
Because it would be the district attorney's office that would prosecute that.
Okay.
So that's something that people often forget. They say whether or not a victim is pressing charges or not, that's not typically up to the victim. It's up to a victim to report. It's up to a victim to hopefully cooperate with law enforcement to make sure that justice is served. But it's not up to the business to decide whether or not they want to have their lawyers prosecute. Our government does that for us.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.